And I don't have a full bio here. I just want to say that we have welcomed Reverend Dikki-Jo Mullen to our pulpit as our guest in the pulpit numerous times. Reverend Dikki-Jo is both a medium and an astrologer, and usually has a finger on the pulse of the world as things keep revolving and changing, and we keep coming through the wheel of the year and the seasons. And it's such a joy to have you here, Reverend Dikki-Jo, to celebrate springtime with us, especially after those cold snaps, as my mama liked to call them. Without further ado, although, as you may have heard, you can find Dikki-Jo over in Casadega, and she's got some wonderful programs coming up. I give you Reverend Dikki-Jo Mullen.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for the wonderful introduction, Joe. You are too kind. And I love your pendant, by the way. I've been admiring it all morning, so it was good to know the history of it. When I drove in this morning, I was looking at the landscaping, and like my own landscape around my little cottage, everything was dry and dead following the awful freezes we had this year. And then I noticed there's a small orange and yellow sunflower. Did all of you see it coming in? I did. It's right in front of my car. The Starship is what the car's name is. I named my cars. Is that silly? But at any rate, the Starship landed right in front of a flower, and I thought, well, that's a good omen for this morning. It seemed like we have to be very aware of synchronicities and omens, maybe now more than ever, because the universe and higher consciousness is trying to talk to us during these times of challenge and of change in the world and within. So much about the springtime is beautiful. I had a nice conversation with Beth on the porch on the way in, and just had met her for the first time. And she mentioned that spring was her favorite season. And I thought, well, that would be a nice thing to reminisce and to point out that we have every season is a favorite and has its beauty, really. But so much poetry goes with the springtime. And this is a poem that I brought. I thought you might like to to hear for the beginning of my program. It's by a Jamaican American poet named Claude McCroy, and this is his salute to springtime. He's lived in the United States for many, many years in New York. So the poem kind of reflects springtime in New York more than in Jamaica. Stay, season of calm and soulful snows. There is a subtle sweetness in the sun. The ripples of the stream gaily run. The wind more existentially by me blows, and each succeeding day grows longer and longer grows. Have you noticed how each day there's a little more sunlight, a little more brightness? We can really feel the changing of the seasons, and the wheel of the year is turning another turn very soon, because the first day of spring is coming up on the 20th. More about that in just a minute. But let's think of the month of March. March suggests Mars, and of course is devoted and dedicated to Mars, the god of energy, vitality, assertiveness, and of war. Mars and March are full of anticipation and preparation. We watch the sun rising higher in the sky each day. We feel the growing season approaching. We know that the earth will soon change its winter coat for its beautiful summer garb of ever-changing hues. As we organize our seed packets, coax seedlings, and review notes from the last year, many of us wait for the ground to thaw. March reminds us that getting ready is part of the joy of gardening. And what better time to gather inspiration? This is the month of leaning toward the light, listening to the land, and laying the groundwork for what's next. There was a famous anthropologist, Charles Godfrey Leland, who wrote a lot of different spiritual awakenings for the spring and other seasons as he traveled in Eastern Europe many years ago. And from the country of what's now Bulgaria, or I'm sorry, Romania, would be Transylvania, there was a lovely ritual of taking on the first day of spring or near the springtime. You could do this anytime this week, a bulb. Now, he didn't say this would work with regular seeds. It probably would, but you could take a tulip bulb, an iris bulb, or even an onion if you like onions, and planted in a new plant for a special wish. There's a chant that goes with it. You can write your own. Leyland's, as he translated it from the local language, was, "As this root grows and as this blossom blows, may what I would wish be drawn unto me." And that might be good to do with the healing, that the universal healing that you mentioned during the joys and concerns at 1 o'clock on Saturday, if you wanted to do something a little extra, or if you want to meditate then for world peace and plant a certain wish for prosperity, health, love, adventure, a new car, a new cat, whatever you would like. Be sure, though, to be sure it's something you want, because this will probably work. It's very, very strong, and it's so easy to do. So there's a lot of other different ways to celebrate the arrival of spring. In the right climate, we can spend time among the cherry blossoms. One of my fantasies, maybe you'd call it a bucket list, has always been to get to Washington, D.C. for the cherry blossoms. How many of you have done that, have seen the cherry blossoms? Quite a few. So is it worth it? Is it worth the drive up there? A few of you are nodding. It is? Okay. Well, there's something that I would like to do. We can also, of course, decorate or eat eggs, Easter eggs, chocolate eggs, real eggs, any types of eggs. They represent the blossoming of rebirth, the springtime of a new life. In one Bosnian town, there's an entire spring festival dedicated to only scrambled eggs. I'd never heard of that before, but that sounded interesting. And then in Switzerland, they ask for the snowman named Boog. I don't know if it's the boogeyman or what, but that's his name, Boogg. And he's supposed to bring in the summer weather as he melts away. In some Slavic countries, they burn and drown the goddess of winter. We kind of like winter here in Central Florida, but they're really tired of it in the north this year. Our country and also all around the globe, it's been a very rough, long winter in a lot of ways. The pagan goddess Marzana is associated with death, plague, winter, and rebirth. She comes from Poland, and in the magic of the Polish mystical tradition, her power wanes as the first day of spring comes, and she dies at the end of winter, and a new spring goddess is born. For centuries, it's been a tradition among the mystics in Poland and nearby countries to help this process along. They'll drown Marzana by building a straw effigy of her, and the goddess is wrapped in linen, adorned with beads and ribbons. And then all the village's people, young and old, parade her through the town in her finery. And by each passing house before the procession, which heads to a body of water, hopefully a river. And there Morzana is lit on fire, and her ashes are thrown into the water. And once she's in the river, no one's ever allowed to touch her body. And then you turn around and leave without looking back. That sort of suggests Lot's wife and the pillar of salt, for those of you who are Bible scholars. But you're supposed to turn and not look back. That's very, very important. Getting rid of the symbol of winter's deadness was considered a dangerous act, wrote one history professor in Poland. Oh, goodness, let's see. Konikowski was his name. I'm not going to even begin to try his first name, but he suggested that the hostile force which was being destroyed in this little ritual reveals the destructive powers which at the very last will exit in our existence. Having gotten rid of the goddess of winter, the bad one, people needed to leave the scene as quickly as possible, again, to risk negative consequences. That's supposed to be to separate ourselves from what's negative. Say if someone is mean to you, steals something, whatever, it's always natural to dwell on it. If you meet 10 nice people in a daytime and one hateful one, which one do you think you'll usually remember at night? Usually the hateful one. And so you have to let go of that idea. We all have something that we want to release. This tradition is linked, of course, to Lent in the esoteric Christian tradition, and it's fasting, giving up meat. That isn't too hard to do for us vegetarians, so you can give up something else. And today that's related to welcoming the spring equinox after the deep winter. It survives as a cheerful activity for children. In Poland, young kids still make a Marzana effigy. Some of them are small, the others are life-size, and they're thrown into the water, the small ones, just to represent the release of negativity. And there have been no reports of the winter goddess exacting her revenge. You can never be too careful, though. But usually she's ready to go to her rest and let the spring goddesses and gods come to the opening. I hope each of you received a copy of the little release mantra. Did anyone not get one? Or you all have one? Think of what you would like to release. I'm going to read the first line for you so that if anyone didn't get one or can't see one, that you would be able to do it anyway. So it's okay. This is a mantra that's extremely powerful. It's on my website for free if you'd like to have it to use regularly. If you say it 3 times a day for 3 weeks in a row, it will definitely help you to release anything negative. But even today, with all of us together, there can be a good release of the negative. And I'll say the lines slowly, and if those of you don't have a copy, just repeat it afterwards. Okay, so I'll say it the first time, and then all of us will do it as like a response. Letting go feels good. Letting go feels good. Now think of what you want to let go of. Focus on it. It's a relative you're mad at, something you weren't able to get at a jumble sale, someone else grabbed the valuable antique, whatever you're mad at. Think of letting it go, and let's begin again. Letting go feels good. And now I'll read the second line. And immediately lightens the spirit. And immediately lightens the spirit. I release old burdens that weigh. I release old burdens that weigh me down, me down. Me down, I let go of feelings that bind me. Me down, I let go of feelings that bind me to the past. Now we'll say again, to the past, I feel healed in my mind, body, and soul. To repeat, I feel healed in my mind, body, and soul. And the last line, I am ready to move forward with a light and peaceful heart. I am ready to move forward with a light and peaceful heart. So be it. Okay, see what happens, but it's very, very likely that you will feel a release from whatever you want to let go of by Friday, the spring equinox, which is March 20th, and it'll be at 10:46 a.m. on Friday. And many people will light a special candle, will put a dish of fresh water with flowers or herbs in it under the sun at high noon on the spring equinox day, and then use that as a holy water, a blessing water. I've done an event chart for the spring equinox, and those of you, I know Joe is a good astrologer, and some of you here are astrologers. I'm going to post these for free on my website if you want to look at the charts in depth. And you're close enough to Orlando that I can cheat and use the Orlando chart here because the latitude and longitude doesn't significantly change it. But let's take a glimpse at the spring equinox chart. The spring equinox is the beginning of the astrological new year. That's when the sun gets to 0000 degrees of Aries. And it's the beginning of a whole fresh new cycle in the great wheel of the year that represents the wheel of life in the pagan metaphysical traditions and in our more traditional calendars. So 10:46 a.m. is the time. At that time, the sun at 00 Aries is almost exactly conjunct two planets, Neptune and Saturn, not far. Neptune is the planet of confusion and illusion. It's also the psychic world and the world of the wee folk, the little people, cryptozoology, all of the different animals that exist but don't exist, like the Loch Ness Monster and others. And so, thinking of what you believe spiritually, it's also the planet of dreams. And I know some of you are very active here in dream analysis. And so, dreams that you have near the spring equinox can be important. Saturn is the planet of reality checks and boundaries. It represents what we can and can't do, what we have to heal from, let go of. Those two planets only conjoin each other about every 35 years. It's a very rare conjunction. However, it's been thousands of years since it's been at the 00 point of Aries. And everyone in the astrological world is doing a double take, wondering what it's going to bring. Well, not only the sun and Saturn and Neptune, but Venus, the moon, and Chiron, that's 6 placements, are all in the sign of Aries. Do we have any Aries people here born? You have a heck of a year coming up. Really, you'll like that, being adventurous Aries people. That's called your solar return horoscope. So this is the year if you want to bike across Florida on that bike trail or do something more adventurous, now is the time. Maybe adopt an exotic animal, whatever. It's very, very exotic. We also have Uranus, the planet of shocks and upsets, conjunct the fixed star Algol, which is where it was when World War II began. That's the last time it was there. And I don't like the aspects the Algol has to this chart. So we want to focus on peace as much as we can. Begin with it yourself. We can't, unfortunately, all of us go over and take the bombs they're dropping out of the air. But what we can do is be peaceful from within. Just do everything you can to avoid letting any kind of argument accelerate, because this could happen under this chart. Pluto is moving along in Aquarius. It hasn't been there since the American Revolution was over, just over. And many people think this is the true age of Aquarius. There's a lot of debate and controversy. We could talk about that the rest of the afternoon and bore everyone to death and have everyone mad because we'd all have different ideas. But the fact that Pluto is moving along in Aquarius, artificial intelligence, and all of the things going on in the world around us that just are unprecedented in so many different ways would be symbolic of that. So think of those ideas with the chart. And then if that isn't enough, we have another new beginning this week on Wednesday. Before the spring equinox on Friday, there's the last new moon of winter. And that's going to be occurring on Wednesday, at 9:23 p.m., and I've corrected this for Eastern time. Do you know that if you write your wishes down, physically write them down, can't type them on the internet, but write them as in a journal at the 8-hour interval following a new moon, they'll be likely to come true as the moon waxes and grows toward full. And so what you would like to do after 9:23 p.m. on Wednesday is to write down the wishes that you might have for yourself on a personal level, for the world, the planet in general. I'm going to write mine for wildlife. Some of you who have been following my Facebook page know that I've been out risking my life demonstrating for the bears along with other people because a lot of people drive by us with guns and throw things and whatever. So a lot of fun. Depends if you have a Sun-Mars conjunction, which I happen to have. But at any rate, it's a good idea to think about dedicating this new moon to a new beginning. It's going to be at 28 degrees of Pisces. And do you know that in the astrology of weather, astrometeorology, new weather patterns begin not on the full moon, they culminate, but on the day of the new moon. So watch the weather on the 28th, 28 degrees on the 18th of March. And of course, we know that there's a final cold snap predicted these next couple of days. I heard last night on the news that the temperature was going down into the 40s again, which is awfully cold here for Florida. It isn't for Chicago, where I was born. It would be balmy, but for us, it's just freezing. And so watch after that. If there's a lot of rain, if there's something unusual, watch the weather for the whole world, the whole country, because that, of course, reflects back on us. Those of you who do the political astrology will know that Florida was born on March 3rd of 1848. What was going on March 3rd of this year? The Great Blood Eclipse. Remember, everyone went out and when the moon turned red, I was out in the middle of Gore Street in Orlando, which is where I live, along with all the street people pointing up at the moon. And the shadow went right over the United States. And it went right over at its darkest, reddest point, right over Florida. I love Florida. If you want to move, this is the time to go. But if you don't, you want to stay here and then write positive things out when the moon is new uh, on that day, on the 18th, March 18th. But at any rate, I thought it was very interesting because new and full moons are beginnings and endings of little cycles each month. A long time ago, the only books people had in their homes were a Bible and the almanac, the farmer's almanac, because that was doing astrology by the moon. And you can do an awful lot just watching new and full moons without going into the intricacies of fixed stars and planets and different things. So just be aware of the new moon and how important this time period is between the last full moon, which was so dramatic, and then the new moon, which is the last new moon of winter. And then just a few days later, we have the sun cycle of the first day of spring. So it's a really good time to introduce yourself and reintroduce yourself and others to new things. Looking a little bit further at this chart, it shows Mars in Pisces, which is a very peaceful sign for Pisces. And of course, Mercury is retrograde. And that's why Joe and Suzanne had to do such good work for our service leader who just isn't well today because the retrograde Mercury is changing everything. That'll be over in just a few days on the 20th. It actually goes direct. This has been a rough retrograde Mercury. How many of you have noticed it? It's just ins and outs and back and forth and everything. It happens for about 3 weeks, 3 or 4 times a year. But hold your breath and have a smile and a sigh of relief because it is, let's see if it is direct. I'm looking at my chart here as it is direct on sometime on the 20th, on the spring equinox, and it is direct for the first day of spring. So, we can all start over with a lot of different good things coming up for the springtime. Some more thoughts about the spring. Give me a heads up, anyone, if I'm going on and on too long. I have a lot of Gemini in my chart. And once you get me talking or writing, it just goes on and on, although my birth sign is Cancer. So the springtime, there's something truly magical about the spring equinox. This is the moment when day and night are in perfect balance. Equinox means equal, and it depends on the latitude and longitude, but the day and the night are the most equally balanced. And this is rebirth and the awakening that's just around the corner. It's an absolutely lovely time of year, and it's especially good for spotting those first tender shoots that are growing. And so, in the historical context, planting seeds, for the spring equinox gives nature a little gentle nudge. And it's a time when, in the Celtic tradition, there is the festival of Ostara. That's the goddess of spring that replaces that sinister goddess they burned in Poland back at the end of the winter season. And there's various involved rituals for the springtime, as well as the festival of Ostara. Many Native American tribes have long celebrated the spring equinox with ceremonies and rituals that represent the awakening and the beginning. And often the Native American traditions will be up at dawn on the spring equinox to greet the spring. And of course, many people go to an Easter sunrise service. They have one every year in Casadega. They have it at 7:30 in the morning, though, because no one can decide whether it's when the spring, the first little fingers of dawn, the rosy finger dawn, as they say in the West, or the spring equinox. And I think it's about time for us to hand the mic back to the boss here.
Thank you so much. Reverend Dikki-Jo, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your insight. Everybody, thank you for joining us today, whether you're here in person or via Zoom. Didn't mention that to the people on Zoom before. Everybody say hi to those on Zoom. And we're going to move forward to extinguishing the chalice. Thank you, Linda, for extinguishing the chalice. Will everyone say it with me together? We extinguish this flame